Hi there. Thanks for coming back. It's good to see you. We're going to continue on in our series about English paper piecing. Last time we talked about the basics of how it's done, what materials you might need. Today we're going to review the techniques a bit and speak specifically about basting and joining your pieces. Now, as we talked about before, with English paper piecing, you're taking a shape of paper and you're folding a material or a fabric over that shape so that your end result is a piece of pattern that you will sew together to make a quilt top. For the example we're using in this class, we're using hexagons. They're 1 inch on the sides. And as we start to assemble, you're going to take your thread and go in on the flat side, up underneath the fold. We're going to circle around, go back on the flat side, up on the fold, and in that little circle, we're going to take our needle, go through the circle, and pull it to make a little knot. And we'll do this all around the piece. Let me do that quickly. On the flat side, up through the fold, again, through the circle to make a knot. And as you see, this goes really quickly. Now, as we're doing this, a couple of things to note. I'm not sewing through the paper. I'm only going through the fabric. That makes it very easy to remove your papers as your project goes on. I'm also not taking huge stitches. They're fairly small, but these are not going to be seen once your project is put together. So if they're a little bigger or they're uneven, that's not really a problem. We're going to snip that, and now they're sewn together. Okay, so that's how to baste. Want fabric only, small little bites, and also make sure that that thread that's going from knot to knot on your hexie is tight, because the knots hold the fabric together, but the thread keeps the shape. Okay, so we have that together. Now what do? Now you're going to join the pieces. And I've got 2 here. We're going to join together. There's 2 different ways that you can join, 2 different types of stitches that I use. One is a whip stitch and one is a flat back stitch. The first one we'll look at is the whip stitch. You're going to take your single thread again, knot in the end. You're going to hold your 2 hexies together, right sides together. Then we're going to take that needle, bring it in underneath the fabric on one of the hexies, up into one of the corners. And you'd like to get it right there on the point if we can. Then we're going to pull it up till it gets to the knot. And then we're going to take just a couple of threads from both sides. In this case, it's a red hexie and a blue hexie. We're going to grab those 2 together and pull them. Circle around, back through the circle, pull it tight, you've got a little knot. Now, you're going to take about 12 stitches to the inch. So that'll be 12 little pokes of the needle in on one side and out on the other side. Again, we're only catching the fabric. We're not catching the paper. That's, again, so you can pull the paper out at the end. It also creates a very small little stitch that you will not see on the front side, or you will see just slightly. Now keep in mind that even if you were to see this after you take the paper out, by the time you finish quilting and wash your quilt, the fabric, because you're using a cotton or mostly cotton fabric, will shrink. It'll have a little bit of puffiness, and those stitches will all but disappear. Besides, if you do see stitches, this is a hand-pieced quilt. So we kind of expect to see some from time to time. It's handmade. and absolutely your personal project. Okay, so we're at the end here. We get right to the end of the hexie, the blue and the red, right at the corner, in through both, through the circle, and pull tight to make a knot. Then what I do is I bring that fabric back through, a little running stitch, underneath the seam allowance. See that there? Pull it out. That keeps the thread out of the way and makes for a neater back. And clip it pretty close there to where you brought the thread out. Now those are together. That was a whip stitch. You can see how small they are. Now, when you get to the point where you need to add a third piece, you're going to be sewing in a V pattern. One of the ways we do this is we take the first hexagon that we're adding and line it up just like we did when we were sewing two together. Only this time we're sewing a third one together. The first side that we join, we're going to join with the whip stitch just like we did the other. Right in the corner there, thread through the circle to make a knot. And then 12 little stitches. Through the fabric only, not through the paper. Just a few threads each time. Want to keep your stitches fairly close together so they create a nice seam for you. We're going to get down to the other end of this 1-inch line, and we're going to put one stitch in right there at the corner where the two pieces come together. Thread, needle back through the circle of thread and pull for a knot. Now, you've added that third piece and you open it up to add it on the second seam. This is where you're going to have to do a flat back seam. And it's exactly what it sounds like. You're going to open them flat, you're going to sew on the back. So we do this the same way. We're just taking a few little threads on each side from each hexie. And I always get a little knot. You'll find that too. Usually they're pretty easy to get out. This one's not going to cooperate with us, so we're just going to pretend for our purposes that it's not there. Pull it over to the side. Again, a couple of threads on the red side, a couple of threads on the white side. Pull it together. And now you're running a stitch up that seam. Again, careful to get fabric only, not the paper. If you do get the paper, you can usually work it out. It's not that big a deal. A lot of times you will feel it when you're making that stitch, that you're poking that needle in, and it's not going in smoothly. It's finding some resistance. And that typically is the paper underneath. So we'll just quickly do those stitches. A couple more. And it's just one stitch after the other, about 12 to 14 an inch. Seems to work the best for me. And when we get to the end, again, we're going to go one stitch right there at the corner, in through the red, out through the white, then the needle through the circle to create the knot. Then we're going to little running stitch, just a couple of stitches, to keep that in place so it doesn't cause a problem later on. And now there's 3. That was quick, right? You make the hexies, you join the hexies. So again, we talked about when you're basting them, fabric only, no paper. That's going to be a running theme through this. Small stitches, tight and neat, gives you the best result. When you're joining them together, you're going to do a whip stitch when you can because it's faster. It usually holds a little better, I find. And it's a little easier to hold on to and keep everything neat and uniform. And then when you can't do a whip stitch, you're going to flip it back and do a flat stitch on the back. Now, we finished this. We've got nice little seams other than our little knot that was giving us some problems. So we're ready to go on and move from here. So we talked about that. Got a little more information now to move on, a little more detail on techniques. Next time we're going to talk about how you know how much fabric your project may take, and I'm going to discuss this project that I'm working on and how it came to be and how I am determining both how much fabric I used for it and how much I will need in addition to. So I hope you'll join us next time. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.